The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit genetec.com. That's GENETEC.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, June the 23rd. Today we're joined by Bill Marcisz, and we're discussing investigations and strategic planning. You'll learn some of the tools and strategies that Bill has used at Advent Health to develop a nationally recognized security program. Now, there was a lot to cover on this topic, so we had to break this up into two parts. So this is the conclusion, the second part, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get right into the content. Okay, and for someone who hasn't taken the step yet of developing a strategic plan, I guess what's a good first step, and are there any resources that you recommend they consult before doing so?
Yes. So, again, being strategic of mind here, I do an audit. And as part of my business, in fact, I developed my audit based out of all my years in healthcare security, and I have an audit process that I developed that goes over about 450 points of healthcare security best practices. And so, if you're looking for your security program to be 100% compliant with all regulatory and accreditation requirements, that's what you need to do. So sometimes I would recommend you start with an audit, and you can create your own audit. You don't need to have, it depends on what you're looking to do. If you're looking for a world-class security program, then certainly put together a very complex audit and go through the steps that I just described there. However, look at what you're trying to address, and then do some research, and then you'll get those best practices. So in terms of like emergency department, workplace violence prevention measures, for example, go to the Emergency Nurse Association. They have a ton of materials out there, and pick apart all of the things that are compliant with workplace violence. And then also the ASIS and the SHRM, the SHRM, is the healthcare version of as is. They combined forces several years ago and came up with the workplace violence guidelines, which are now standards. And go through that, read through that, and then pick it apart, and then answer those questions. Does my workplace violence program meet all these criteria? And going back to the emergency department, Emergency Nurse Association audits. There's a lot of different places out there to get these things. You just need to do the research, and you can pull this together. And so when you're trying to develop your strategic plan, and also think about it in the terms the way I did it, is those 5 areas of security. Your security program isn't just a bunch of security officers out there doing patrol. They need communications, they need training support, they need skill sets and technology to interface. All of these things create a synergy. Culture plays such a huge role in our mindset here, because we work at it. We work at culture because it's all of our leaders. If you were to come here and interview some of my security managers and a lot of our supervisors, we are very deliberate in our culture. We actually have a program that we developed in-house to ensure our people have that mindset. So it's predicated on a couple books. We have there's a book out there. It's called When Fish Fly, and that book is in essence is about turning a negative program around and making it having and creating that employee engagement to the point where your staff are holding each other accountable to do the best job they can. And what I ask our staff to do, and I'll do this a lot of times in our staff meetings, and when I speak to them, is I said, listen, I just want you to do one thing after every single task that you complete, and that's ask yourself one question: was that a world-class effort? And it doesn't matter whether it's I released the body from the morgue, or delivered a valuables envelope, or restrained a hostile patient, or did an investigation and returned somebody's slippers. It's did I do a world-class effort? Is that report I just wrote worthy of a world-class effort? And if you get people thinking along those lines, and then give them a mental permission slip to hold their coworker accountable to that same service standard, then um, that is really the goal there. And the other book we draw a lot from is it's called "If Disney Ran My Hospital: 9.5 Things I'd Do Different." And really, that's the customer service aspect of the job. So, security personnel being out there on the front line, they have the ability to make an impression on your customer base. And if you've ever been to Disney, you know that if you ever approached a what they call a cast member, we call them employees, but if you reached out to a cast member at Disney and you said, "Hey, listen, I need directions to wherever," chances are they'll walk you all the way over to that point, instead of just pointing out, "Hey, go down here, take a left, and up the way there." And that's not the way a Disney person would handle it. And then they have the we focus a lot on empowerment, and this is where this concept comes from. We empower our security officers to make decisions right then and there on the spot. You know, as long as they have a rational way of explaining something that goes wrong later on, nobody's going to be held. Nobody's going to get in trouble. That's what we try to explain. Um, so. So we give them the freedom to do their job, really, and I think that's one of the other the other key component to our culture here in our team. So, it's just what we do, and having 250 people, all of the same mindset, working toward the same goal, is really important. So I think culture is really the key to strategy. And Dr. Peter Drucker, he says culture eats strategy for breakfast every day of the week. That's one of his quotes. I say that's true unless you make culture part of your strategy. And that's really a security program. But you pick them apart and start line iteming what you want to do, and then you got to take a step back and reassess. Okay, this is what I would like to do. Is this what healthcare security best practices dictate? And IHOS is another good resource for this. So if you're a member, they have a whole bunch of guidelines and stuff on there that you can research and then use that as references in your strategic plan as well. This is what the number one healthcare security organization is saying about things like visitor management or threat assessment and things of that nature. So, and these are the ways to go about mitigating it or preventing it. And you look at those different things and how much does this cost and what does it take in terms of training? What is the sustainability? and start factoring all that into your so in essence, Brian, your strategic plan, you really have to go about it strategically to uh, figure it out. You have to develop it, and everybody has their own own thoughts and processes. And I'll leave you with this too. And I explained this to a lot of healthcare administrators, and we joke about it. And I said, look, we have 80,000 employees in our organization, and that's exactly how many opinions you have on what security measures should be in place. So, being a security director, this is a tough job. You are constantly being challenged. The way your program operates is constantly being challenged, and it's 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 something. It's actually good in a way because that serves as your vetting process for your program, is to have it challenged. Why don't you have an armed officer here? Or why don't you have a moat dug around my hospital and barbed wire at the door? I mean, you know, the the as security professionals, we're constantly being tasked and challenged with these types of questions. And I see that the folks who are successful, the one common thread is that they do the research and they have a plan, and they're able to speak. They're able to translate security and law enforcement concepts into the language that our healthcare administrators speak. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that is metrics and cost efficiency ratios and things like that.
Now, I'd be remiss not to ask you, just given the current times, what impact has COVID-19 had on your organization?
Well, it's very interesting. I was actually having a discussion about that with my immediate upline the other day, and so I also have emergency management reporting to me, and that's part of my function. So I would say that in right about the end of February, when we were first advised that what it was, the reality of what we were facing was about to hit, because as emergency management folks, especially here in Florida, we're used to we're pretty good at emergency management. We have hurricanes, you know, a couple times a year, and other types of issues, whether it's an active shooter or maybe wildfires and things like that. So Florida, Florida as a state has a very good robust EM platform. This was something a little bit different, and I have to say that I have never seen this organization prepare so much and be ready to take on such a very unknown commodity like a pandemic, and this particular pandemic. So in terms of security, like a lot of folks out there, and of course I've been on the phone with many of our nation's leading healthcare security directors in various different hospitals, and discussing, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And through that collaboration, coming up with the best ways to secure our environment. Our organization did a very smart thing early on, and that was that we decided to go to a no visitation or almost no visitation. You can still get in under certain urgent circumstances. Of course, we're aided by the fact that during a pandemic like this one, a hospital is the last place somebody wants to go to. So just the nature of the event itself is having a deterrent effect in having people come into our facilities. We were able to secure our perimeters, and then we implemented alternate care sites in the form of tents outside most of our sites, and then we're also looking at other alternate care sites throughout the community. And fortunately, that did not have to. We did not have to go that far. I think we are starting to toward the downside of our peak here in Florida is starting to open up in bits and pieces. So I think that we were able to do a lot of planning and overcome a lot of getting people, having unnecessary people in our organization. Our Advent Health probably has about 15% of its workforce working remotely right now. Maybe that becomes the new norm, which isn't all that bad because it's less people in your organization. And one thing we've noticed is we've had a 20% decline in requests for security services. However, they're not the type of services I would have liked to have seen a decline in. We're still seeing about the same number of patient contact threats. Those types of things have pretty much remained level. I'm really fortunate to have some statisticians on our staff, and they're giving me weekly updates on where we sit as an organization, and where our occurrences are occurring, where's the hot spots and things like that. So, but like I said, we've had to transition our platform and the way we work. So very few people in security can work remotely. Our technology access folks are working remotely. Our investigators are in the office about 50% of the time as what they used to be, because they can do a lot of this stuff remotely. But for operations folks, we have to be here. And while I can work remotely from home, I don't. I choose to be here with my team. That would be a very poor, in my mind. Well, it might be the smart thing to do, take myself out of the equation, but it wouldn't demonstrate the type of leadership that I think is necessary for our team. So trying to get out there as much as possible to just say hello to the team and just let them know that we're all around and supporting them. But by and large, this is going to have a profound impact on the way we conduct business. Healthcare, it already has taken a hit. We had to shut down elective procedures and things like that. A good chunk of what hospitals make is on those types of services that we provide, and setting up our hospitals in a very safe way. I'm on about a half a dozen task forces in our organization designed in securing our hospitals, how to open up first it was how to close the hospitals down. Now it's how to open them up in a safe manner. And that's even harder than shutting them down. And closing down hospitals is not an easy task either. We had to do it in phases, and it was a little bit of a challenge, but we got it done. And then leveraging technology. Like I said, I'm very progressive. At first, I was dismissing thermal cameras, and now I've been immersed in thermal camera research now for the past 6 weeks, and have learned more about these products than I ever cared to learn. So, and I understand the ins and outs and where the value is, and how they can be used and how they cannot be used. And so, if anybody's looking at thermal cameras, well, first of all, if you have a policy and procedure on how your staff interact, please send it to me. I'm still looking for that. It doesn't seem like anyone has it, but it's a new technology, and it's starting to become deployed more frequently in a healthcare environment. But that being said, I think there's a certain value and there is a certain place for the thermal cameras now. And what I'm interested in is, does this technology move past the point in time in our nation's recovery when we get past this pandemic? I mean, is this going to be a permanent fixture in our hospital screening process at our entrances? So these are questions that are, time will tell, but in the short term, there is value in certain circumstances, in certain locations. And one thing I've noticed is that while it might be a good solution at one entrance of your hospital, it's not going to give you any value in another entrance of your hospital. So again, it just goes back to what we do and kind of what our program does best. We do a lot of research, we do a lot of planning, we do a lot of collaboration with other departments, and then we come up with a recommendation and what we think is the best solution for our organization.
Now, Bill, was there anything that you wanted to discuss that I haven't mentioned to this point?
Yes. Well, one thing that is starting to come up more frequently, and I've actually given a couple presentations on it already, and that is canines and security. I think that this is something that should be looked at in terms of another value add. We're starting to see that the canines are giving us we are trying to develop a community policing type of stance here for our security personnel. And the canines are a good way they're like an icebreaker. And this gives us an opportunity to connect with mainly our employee workforce, but also patients and visitors. And they get to meet the canines and they get to talk to the canine handler, and sometimes there's a security officer with them. And we do meet and greets and things like that. And it allows the employee who wouldn't otherwise engage with a security officer this opportunity, and it's a little bit of a window into the Advent Health Security Program here in Central Florida. So the canines, we use them for, I'm trying to tactfully say this, behavior management, I guess you would say. Folks who are inclined to maybe argue or be very aggressive with a staff member or a security officer or sometimes even a police officer. Their tone changes a little bit with a 100-pound German Shepherd looking at them. They have that impact. So there's every hospital in an urban environment deals with a gang element to one degree or another, and as part of that culture, sometimes these people find themselves in our facilities for medical treatment for gunshots and other types of violent crimes. And the disruption that can cause in our emergency department waiting areas, and then also maybe in our exam areas, is tremendous, and it impacts other folks who are coming to the hospital for other types of treatment. So I don't necessarily want to be exposed to that element, particularly when they're here for treatment themselves and are undergoing stress and whatever else attaches to that treatment as a patient. So the canines give you that advantage having had to walk this back with certain types of gang or violent crimes that occur. You'll have a group of friends or family members of the person who's a victim, and they're in an agitated state because hey, listen, this person just got shot, and they're stressed, and then they're wondering, oh, is there retaliation coming? Are they coming to finish this person off? That type of thing. So that adds to the already volatile environment. Then our clinical staff and our security personnel having to deal with this new dynamic entering into our emergency department environment. Again, it's sometimes we need to be able to bridge and make that connection to this particular family or group of people here who are visiting, and the canines sometimes help as a way to make that connection. A lot of times there is no way to make a connection. The folks are just absolutely hostile and aggressive. And a lot of times what will happen is somebody is that unofficial, that informal leader of the group, and they'll you try to seek that person out. And the canine, while somebody can threaten a security officer, they can intimidate a nurse. What they can't do is they can't intimidate the dog, and the dog doesn't understand what you're saying to them. And there comes a point in time in that exchange where this person realizes that they have no power over this dog, and then they become afraid. They're not going to show you, obviously. They're going to rant on and repeat themselves. But what the dog does at this point in time, and a skilled security officer will pick up on this, it gives that officer the opportunity to regain the advantage in that relationship. Not to scold this person about the behavior that they're conducting, but it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, we're here to take care of your friend. We know he's been shot. We're gonna take the best care possible. But what I need from you right now is to go back there and kind of keep everybody under control. Help me help you, and now you've elevated the status of this person in this informal group dynamic. And they are now unconsciously following your directions. And that's all we wanted to do. That was the goal, was compliance. So that's where that canine gives you advantage in that type of behavior management type of environment. What the dogs also do for us is public relations events. We bring them to employee meet and greets, and sometimes we'll allow patients to pet the dogs and things like that. It has that calming, soothing feature. But the dogs also, they've almost become a signature brand for our security team. A lot of photos get circulated either through our media department or through other means, and a lot of times the canines are featured in that. So it adds that level of that higher level of security. And probably the most important thing and the most value you get out of the dogs is that it makes our employees feel safe. I just, we've had a couple of sites where our clinical teams, because of where they're located or the types of patients that they treat, the clinical staff are just afraid, and the dogs give them that blanket of security that we were just not able to do when we implemented tasers, and we put body armor on our security officers. So we have we're very big into that command presence type of look to, create that control of the environment through presence. But the dogs just add that finishing touch onto that look, and it has allowed us that ability to recapture the confidence of those teams in the security program. The things that we don't do with the other thing that the dogs are trained to do, they're trained to intercept folks with weapons. So they are trained to go after somebody who's carrying a gun or knife. We don't want to use the dogs for those purposes, but we will. But the other things that we don't do, we're not searching for drugs. I know some hospital programs do that, and that's not a bad idea because those situations do come up. But we're not a police force. We're a security force for a private organization, and this is just what we chose to use the dogs for. So I mean, there's other uses for canines, but we have right now we have 15 dogs altogether in our canine program, and 13 of them are German Shepherds, and the other two are Labradors. One's a black lab and one's a golden lab. The Labradors meet a really good. The Labradors are the dogs that we use for explosives. Um, so we have our own capability to search for bombs and things like that in case we need to, in case we need to. We're also cross training a couple of the dogs to track people, mainly a patient who has eloped or is a concern for or a patient who we might have a concern for their safety to go find them. So that's a new element that we're adding to our canine program. I would say that if you have the ability to go out and institute a canine program in your security department, and it's really something to look for or attempt to do. There are some pros and cons to the canines. There is a cost to them, and it may not fit the image of your program. You do have to have folks who are willing, hopefully they're dog lovers, to be a canine officer. Make that commitment to your organization for a few years at least, so that you don't have to go through the trouble of retraining and re-engaging a new handler with a dog who's already attached to someone else. So I think the canines it's kind of a relatively new concept that's been gaining traction here in the last few years. COVID might put a little damper on instituting the program. We initially took our dogs out of the hospital environment for the last couple of months during the COVID response. We have since done some research and determined that the canines do not really represent a huge risk for spreading COVID. So we're now in the process of bringing the dogs back into our hospital environments. So looking forward to seeing them again.
Excellent. And I guess in closing, what message would you like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Well, right now I think every one of you and us are really unsung heroes. Although I don't really consider myself a hero. I give a lot of credit to the line officers who are out there on a day-to-day basis, just interfacing with the public, dealing with very difficult situations. This is a very emotionally charged environment that we find ourselves in. Hospitals are microcosms of the greater society out there, and again, this is where the rubber meets the road. You see, in security, probably the one thing that kind of brought me back from practicing law and back into the healthcare environment was you really get to bear witness to the very best in people and sometimes the very worst. And so if you're a student of the human condition, this is a good environment to just kind of take it all in on. I think healthcare security is come so far from the point in time when I first got into it in the early 1980s. We didn't have computers, or the internet, and that was a far off concept. And I think the ability to communicate once the world got smaller, our ability to connect with one another in different areas of the country to see what each other was doing and come together through IHOS and create best practices. And really, healthcare security now is an industry. It's um, when I got into it, it was just a department in a hospital, and we really didn't uh, collaborate with any or look and see what the hospital in the next city was doing. It just never came to our minds to do that. And in fact, one time we had an issue. I can't even remember what it was. But I said to my manager at the time, I said, "Well, you want me to call the guy over in Waterbury, Connecticut, and see what he's doing?" And he said, "Nope. Uh, we're going to come up with the best solution for us, and that's the end of it." And I said, "Oh, okay." Um, and but he was a smart guy, so it wasn't a hard thing to comprehend. It's like, okay, yeah, we're going to take care of ourselves and do what we got to do. We're very smart people, and we're going to come up with that solution tailor made, and we're not going to do that. But and that was my mindset for probably another decade or so. And this is where I say for myself, I had to become open minded and 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 do a very hard thing. Guys, we're guys. We're not going to stop and ask for directions. That's just not the way we're wired. So we're going to do it our way, and never mind what anybody else is doing. But no, that's just exactly not the way to do it. uh, especially now when there's just so many people. Like I said, hopefully in a couple of years we'll be at another IHOS or ASIS event. You go to these events, meet people, exchange business cards, and then actually follow up and call that person. Say, hey, how you doing? And develop those relationships, because this is the thing that is going to help you in your career. Again, I'm going back again. Maybe more of a law enforcement thing, but it's a carryover into security because we kind of our worlds kind of interface a lot. Um, there was the interagency cooperation. It just didn't really exist to the way it does today. And back then, everybody was in their own little camp, and I'm sure it still exists in some pockets in the country today. But now it's a little bit different. It's the same thing. We were of the mind, well, we weren't going to share anything that we were doing with anybody. There was no reason. This is not like it's national security implications here. This is the way we watch patients in an emergency room, or this is the way we write our reports. Once we're able to overcome that, you're able to open up and then um, share these concepts. So I think a lot of credit is due to the folks who have, and especially in the last 10 years, have really, really gotten involved with healthcare organizations like IHOS, some really great work on the ASIS Healthcare Council. I've gotten to know a lot of these folks very well, and the free exchange of ideas and being able to, like I said, just have those folks on speed dial, and help you with a problem. I think that's probably I just, in my closing message is thank you to all the security officers out there and line staff for keeping us safe and especially in this very challenging time. And then thank you to the healthcare security community in general for being able to step up uh, and make this profession a true profession and a true industry. So that's those are my two closing messages.
Awesome. And you alluded to the whole networking piece and just making those connections. How can we connect with you?
Well, you can just Google me up, Bill Marcisz, and it'll come up. Um, certainly, LinkedIn is a good way to get a hold of me. I'm on Twitter. I try to stay apolitical now, but you know, if I'm ticking you off, it's not intended to tick you off. It's just the way I feel. I'm sorry, but no, certainly, and whatever people's beliefs are. What security is the one common denominator, and I'm always willing to give a few minutes and help somebody out because I get it in return. So it's a free exchange of ideas, and so Google and then LinkedIn is probably the best.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Bill. I really appreciate it. We went through a lot of good stuff today. So thank you very much. I know this is a tough time to free yourself up. So it is greatly appreciated.
No, thank you. And thank you for doing this healthcare security cast. This is a great way to get some information out there.
And this concludes our 2-part interview series with Bill Marcisz. Join us next week when our guest is Bob Stenhouse, and we discuss issues related to post-traumatic stress in the healthcare security environment. Just a reminder to engage with the Healthcare Security Cast on social media. We have a LinkedIn page that you can follow, a LinkedIn group that you can join to participate, a Facebook page and group as well. Also, we have a new Twitter account, which is @HCSecurityCast, a new Instagram account, which is @TheHealthcareSecurityCast, and a new TikTok page, which is @healthcare_security_cast. Also, you can go to brianhamilton.com for connections to all of these sites. And feel free to connect with me as well. My name again is Brian, BRINE Hamilton, and I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as well. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay safe and take care.